A very good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you, wherever in the world you might be. Welcome to day two of the virtual Cross-Border Summit 2.0, hosted by Vinculum. My name is Shurit Dev Sharma, and I am your moderator for this session. And we started our summit yesterday, and yesterday we covered a macro view. And from today, we start the country focus sessions. Today, we focus on India, both as an opportunity to enter and as an opportunity to take brands from India to other countries. So the topic of the day is India in the cross-border e-commerce growth bigly. And our esteemed panelists will share with us valuable insights, which will help us decide how and where we need to act. So with that, let me quickly introduce our panelists. In the interest of time, I'm taking the liberty of doing the introductions, but as the panelists speak, I'm sure they will tell you a little more about, how their business is being run. So we start with Anirudh Suri. Anirudh is a senior manager at Amazon. All of us know about Amazon, needs no introduction. Anirudh has been part of Amazon for over 9 years and has helped shape various businesses across hardlines and electronics categories with Amazon and with Cloudtail. He leads the cross-border trade imports business at Amazon and helps brands to launch their selection in India through the Amazon marketplace. Amazon, of course, while it needs no introduction, I think would still want to say that Amazon, of course, is a multinational technology company focusing on e-commerce, cloud computing, digital streaming, AI, and meaning anybody who doesn't know of Amazon today probably living under a rock. Next, we have a very esteemed panelist. We have Mukesh. Mukesh Sahu is the country manager of Ping Pong Global Solutions. And Mukesh has experience also in companies like Amazon, like Toshiba and Honeywell. So vastly experienced and has worked in e-commerce, in hospitality tech, embedded software development. And in his current role, Mukesh is helping Ping Pong to expand to multiple customer segments while strengthening the current product offerings and also working on increasing the overall market share. And aligned on Ping Pong Global Solutions, it's an innovative payment service provider for cross-border e-commerce sellers around the world. And Ping Pong has been on a mission to help e-commerce sellers keep more of their hard-earned profits, right? And that's important, friends, because at the end of the day, we want revenue, but of course, we also want profits, and that's where Ping Pong plays a big role. Next, we come to Sandeep, and Sandeep is, as you can see over there, friends, Sandeep is Assistant Director General International Relations with the Government of India, India Post. India Post, of course, we all know, and from childhood, I'm sure we've all used India Post in many ways. Sandeep is an officer of the 2014 batch of Indian Postal Service, and you see his designation over there. In his assignment, he looks after international relations of India Post. What does that mean? That means global business development and promotion of international e-commerce from India, which means he and his team are facilitating brands and sellers who are wanting to go out of India into a global landscape. Sandeep is an elected member of the Quality of Service Fund Board of the Universal Postal Union. He represents India from the Asia and Oceania region. So not only doing great work in the Indian context, but also in the global context. He's the national coordinator of these QSF projects, country project manager of operational readiness for e-commerce, and is leading the electronic advanced data, which is an EAD project of the UPU from India. And India Post, we know, more than a century and a half old. It's been the backbone of communications in India and doing some amazing work right now beyond what we could imagine. And when we speak to Sandeep, he's going to share more insights on that. And last, but certainly not the least, we have Vishesh Khurana. Vishesh is director and co-founder of ShipRocket, and we'll talk to you about ShipRocket in a minute. ShipRocket is a new age logistics aggregation platform that drives global and domestic shipping for MSMEs operating in the e-commerce sector. Vishesh is actively involved in overseeing seller acquisition for the platform and is driving India's burgeoning small and mid-sized merchants by providing a go-to destination for them to launch and manage their business online. Vishwesh is a serial entrepreneur and he's previously founded companies like Mobiz Infotech and has specialization in marketing and sales, right? About ShipRocket, again, a household name in India today. If you guys are ordering things online in India, you might be familiar with the name. Is India's only automated shipping solution for e-commerce. And it lets you choose from 17 plus courier partners. If you're not sure who to go to, you go to ShipRocket and they take the hard decisions for you. Print shipping labels, track orders from a single panel, right? Very quickly about myself. My name is Shurit Dev Sharma. I am an industry professional from the fashion retail industry, 30 years of experience across the globe. Currently, I mentor the Vinculum Group. So that's for introductions, friends. And we now will hand over to the esteemed panelists with our questions. And the first question, before the question, a few things on hygiene. We have a 90-minute session. The first 60 minutes is about interactive, the question and answers. And then we have an open session where people can ask questions from the audience. And also, if the panelists have something else to add beyond what the questions that were there, please go ahead and ask the questions. So good to start. We start with a question that is aimed for everybody, and maybe we start with Anirudh and Amazon, if you could help us. So the question is this. So the Indian e-commerce market stood at the number that it stood at in 2017, and in 2021, where it has come, without quoting figures, we all know that it has experienced quantum growth, right? And it's projected by 2026 to reaching close to $200 billion. The shifts that you have witnessed in your business, and also, now we have one more animal, which is the pandemic. So what have we witnessed before and after the pandemic? What are the changes that you're seeing? And what's your impression about how that will impact us in the short term and in the long term? We start with Amazon with Anirudh.
Thanks a lot, Surid. Hello, everyone. Great meeting all of you interacting on this platform. Thanks a lot, Vinculum, for inviting us. Going back to the last 18 months, of course, it's been a big change for all of us. E-commerce also, and the role that e-commerce has played in the last 18 months has been pivotal, if I may use that word. Like last 18 months, this overall sector has ensured that we are in a position to deliver essential products to the customers at the safety of their homes. Amazon overall has seen more customers come and shop on our marketplace, and we've seen a natural spike in the demand for across all categories. But if I may to name a few, which have seen exponential increase, it will be the essential products and selection that services the demand for a work from home like scenario. Typically productivity enhancers like Bluetooth headsets, post-its, and also in terms of writing tablets, laptops, mobile phones, all of this. We've also seen a spike in categories like athleisure clothing, overall going up, given people adapting to the work from home scenario. So while we've seen a spike in the demand, we've also seen a spike in the total number of sellers who are showing interest and who are launching their selection onto our platform to service this demand. Since January of last year, we've had more than 3 lakh sellers who joined Amazon India and who made use of this overall opportunity of the moving customer trend to service that demand. While some of these trends will taper down as the pandemic ceases and we return to a normal scenario, we however believe that some of these have been habits that have been formed and that will stay. For example, a lot of customers have experienced e-commerce or shopping for certain categories like grocery on e-commerce for the first time through this period. And a lot of them will continue given the overall convenience being witnessed in terms of buying and delivering accessing selection through through e-commerce. We also expect a high degree of stickiness coming from these customers, translating to repeat visits and purchases even in the post-pandemic era. We've also seen, and another example could be in terms of the mindset change that we've seen in corporate India towards work from home. We expect a lot of continues to continue the work from home policy in some shape or form, maybe partial work from home or complete work from home, even in the post-pandemic era, which will see us build a continued demand for the productivity tools that are already called out earlier. So overall, if I see the shift pre and post, e-commerce has played a key role in terms of just enabling customers to continue shopping in a constrained environment. A lot of habits have changed in this particular process, but there's going to, we estimate, a high degree of stickiness and a continued downstream impact of some of these habits even in the future. That's what I had from Amazon's standpoint.
That's very interesting, Anirudh. You mentioned about home productivity tools. Besides that, are there any specific categories that you've seen which have experienced boom and which you assume will continue for some time?
Oh yeah, so that across the board, like, so if you see, right, in terms of what is it that people have started doing more at home, a lot of cooking has happened, right? People have picked up a lot of hobbies. Cooking is one of them. I myself started cooking and exploring multiple cuisines. And as a result of that, you've suddenly seen a lot of the kitchen appliances selling across the board, right? From a work from home scenario, we've seen a lot of furniture in terms of office desks, chairs, those being sold overall, right? We've seen a huge spike in terms of STEM toys, educational toys for the kids, because kids are spending a lot more time at home and parents are trying to see how they stay away from television and at the same time keeping themselves entertained at home. We've seen a lot of sale for fitness equipments like treadmills, etc., because people aren't going to the gym, they aren't out jogging. How do they keep themselves fit? And some of us, in a lighter note, we've also been cooking. So we're cooking a lot of food. We've been consuming a lot of food. So we also need to now burn some food. So we've seen the full circle happening on Amazon, and we've been following people throughout this journey. And I think the sellers overall in India have also adapted so fast over here in terms of bringing in the right kind of selection onto the platform. Of course, Amazon has also played a role in sharing these guidances upfront, sharing these trends upfront with the seller ecosystem overall to ensure that we are quick to react to the customers' changing needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic insights. I think also the work that Amazon is doing is nothing without logistics. And we know Amazon is a great logistics provider. But let's talk to Vishesh. And Vishesh, if you could also bring in your insights both on this question and specific with the pandemic, what have you seen and how have you reacted to it?
Well, of course, post-pandemic, one thing that has changed for everyone is the shift to online, the behavioral shift towards online shopping in terms of every category, right? The other shift that we have seen is expectation from the logistics point of view, where people do expect now shipments coming in sooner. People now expect shipments, the whole policies around returns, the whole policies around the whole Amazon-like experience is also translated towards the direct selling people as well. So there has been a tremendous demand, plus behavior should go from both sides.
And if you could give some examples of, what Shiprocket is doing to adapt to or lead some of those changes.
From Shiprocket's point of view, while we did start new line of businesses, from a logistical point of view, we launched our warehousing. So we launched warehouses in each and every city in India so that people's businesses are not impacted by lockdowns in local geographies. And we are now enabling sellers and encouraging sellers to distribute their inventories in different locations. That gives them the benefit on two fronts. One, of course, that reduces the time and cost of shipping, because shorter the distance, the lower the cost of shipping. And now that is also fulfilling the expectation from the buyer's point of view of getting their products sooner. So the other is, of course, if there are local lockdowns, if there are local geographical border closing, online business should not impact because they can fulfill the same demand via a different location and different warehouse. I think that has helped direct sellers a lot from a shipping point of view.
Excellent, excellent. I think we used to say necessity is the mother of invention. Now we are saying necessity is the mother of innovation. And I think all of you, all four of you, are at the forefront of that. Let's go and talk to Mukesh. I think looking after a very vital part of it, because we say, the business is not complete till the checks in the mail, or actually the money is in the bank. So Mukesh, if you could help us understand your insights on this particular question, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and from Ping Pong's perspective, how you're helping your customers.
Yes, hi Surit. So erstwhile, if you talk about Ping Pong, erstwhile the focus was more on e-commerce segments for our companies, and I would believe that was the focus for majority of the companies in the same space. But during the pandemic, something that we have seen is from the demand side, the demand in the online platforms is has increased multiple folds, and we all are privy to that, so we all know that. But at the same time, from the supply side, we could see, like after speaking to a lot of our clients, we could understand in the last 1 year that they were facing a lot of challenges during the pandemic times when the lockdown was in place to maybe procure goods, or let's say manufacture the goods in their factories, and at times with respect to logistics also. So like sending the products outside of India and keeping it into the e-commerce website warehouses was becoming a challenging task for them. So that being the reason, we realized that there was an inherent need for us to maybe switch to different segments which could de-risk us should there be another pandemic wave, right? So that being the reason, recently we have started shifting into other segments apart from e-commerce. So we are now catering to the B2B exporter segments, freelancers, and other segments, wherein we think that the impact of such events would be lower compared to an e-commerce segment of sellers who have to stock their products in the other warehouses. So we have started focusing onto different segments, and when we start doing that, that fuels the need for coming up with new products and approval process and operations also to support those new segments. So these are the things that we are doing, finding the new segments and coming up with new products to support them.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we've now heard from three gentlemen on, what's happening. Let's hear from somebody who I think represents the most important player at the table, which is the government. And I think we know that for a country's development, it's not just good enough to make the country be seen as a great market for people from all over the world, but also be seen as a great value addition in terms of creating brands that are aspired for and bought all over the world. And I think India Post is spearheading that activity. So I would request Sandeep from India Post to shed some light on, what they have been seeing, what are the challenges they have seen, and what are their insights on this. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you, Suhrid, and it's a pleasure to be with all the esteemed panelists. So, our response with respect to COVID pandemic, or in the last few years, let me classify it basically into a geographical scenario and a profile-wise scenario. Earlier, as we all know, e-commerce was restricted to maybe urban areas, cities, and tier 1, tier 2 cities and all. And over the last few years, what we have been noticing is that it has gone completely into rural areas. Like right now, when you go into any part of this country, I've been to Northeast, Andaman, any place within India, you will see that there is a huge spike in e-commerce shipments going out for delivery over there. And that's a place where India Post has been playing its role with its 1.55 lakh post offices available in any nook and corner of the country. And we have been facilitating e-commerce delivery through that. And as far as the profile of mail that goes through the postal channel is concerned, what we have noticed over the past few years has been that there is a drastic shift from the personal communication side to e-commerce side. Like people have been using e-commerce website heavily, and the number of personal mail for obvious reason has gone down, and that has been replaced much by the number of e-commerce shipments, packets and all. So the basic profile of mail itself has changed into packet products that is less than 2 kilogram weight. So that is with respect to the profile of mails that we have seen over the last few years. And with respect to the cross-border e-commerce scenario, even the international the Universal Postal Union, which is the umbrella organization of all postal operators throughout the world. As a part of UP, what we have been observing is that with the rise in number of mobile phones and then like internet penetration within the country, like almost all international e-commerce websites have become a household name within India. And any e-commerce website in any part of the world, like through their postal channel, they have been sending it to India also, and we have been delivering it to any nook and corner of the country. And with respect to the kind of sellers that you had rightly pointed out, yes, our primary aim will be to facilitate all kind of sellers, how small it may be, from whichever part of the country it may be and all. So through e-commerce websites, what they have been doing is that, as Amazon has rightly pointed out, the number of sellers registered has been increased. And with the rise in number of sellers, what happened is that they have been using postal channel a lot for export of their items. Like they get the message, and from any part of the country, they might post it as a normal shipment only, and then that is getting delivered in any part of the world. And with the kind of Indian diaspora that we have, if you look at the items that goes through our channels, it is amazing. Like the demand is very different. Like, and almost any company that is into e-commerce scenario, they are giving them the like facility for delivery outside country, and they use postal channel a lot. And from the government point of view, like as you had pointed out regarding yesterday's session, there has been a huge focus on exports through MSMEs and all. So that is a role where India Post has been playing well. And then we had started a few export facilitation centers all over the country in the last few years, wherein there will be customs presence also. So India Post and India Customs have joined hands, and then we are having export facilitation centers wherein people can directly drop in items. We have been promoting commercial exports through postal channel, and overall there is a push from the government of India to promote MSMEs and small scale exporters, artisans, etc., so that they're the Make in India thing, like their brand gets a global visibility. So that is one point where India Post is also working on.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think it's suffice to say that these are exciting times for the country, depending on whether you are wanting to come into this country to appeal to its vast population, or to take your brand out of this country. And I think this is also a time of, I would say, democratization, right? There was a time when only very big brands could afford to think of international businesses. I used to work for some of those companies. But today, I think if you have a good product, I think our ecosystem and our technology affords you the ability to sell very, very quickly. So the link to that, my next question goes back to Anirudh from Amazon, saying, if I happen to be, let's say, a seller sitting in Indonesia or Malaysia, and I want to come into India, I've heard about this, or maybe I'm attending this session, I want to come in. And if they want to come in and sell on Amazon, right? What are the steps? What are the procedures? What kind of categories would you be, very thrilled about? And what are some of the do's and don'ts, if you could shed some light?
Sure. Thanks a lot, sir. So for any seller who's based outside of India, I think, or any brand who's based outside of India and they wish to offer their selection over here through Amazon, I think there are two, if I may just split this channel into two channels. One is in which the brand and the inventory are based outside of India, and they're just shipping it to the customer when they get an order, and which is, you may call it as dropship. In Amazon parlance, we call it as MSN. So I think that is one channel, and we'll get to it. And the second channel is where the goods are actually present in India, and you want the customers to get their orders fulfilled very quickly. So from a brand perspective, which is an international entity, let's say the brand is based out of Indonesia, for them to sell directly into India to the customer without having any intermediary, that's a bit challenging. Because there are certain norms and nuances that needs to be fulfilled, because every customer who orders directly outside needs to submit his KYC documents. Those get collected by the carrier. The fulfillment carrier then goes back and hands it over to the brands. The brands will verify that they have the ownership along with the logistic partners, and then they will ship it to the customer over here. And this overall process takes about 14 to 15 days. It's a good channel to go ahead and just surface all of the millions of selections that the brand may have, but not the best channel from a customer service point. because the customer experience isn't the best over here. Like they have to wait for anywhere between 15 to 30 days for them to get the product. And between this period, the customer also changes their mind, wherein they have the choice of going ahead and canceling or just rejecting the product. And hence it may not even make business sense for the seller. What we recommend highly is that the products are kept in India and the customers get those products fulfilled from here. And if a brand wishes to do that, there are two large options present that come to my mind. One is that the brand sets up an entity in India through the FDI route that the government allows, sets up an entity, a business, and then basis the compliance regulatory requirements, ends up registering on Amazon and start selling. It is fairly simple for, like it's much more simpler for single brand retailers to do this, or single brands to come and set this up. So that is as an option is available, but that's also time consuming. It's going to take anywhere between 6 months to a year for that to happen. This is my experience. What is the other option is, and that's the option that most of our brands follow, is that they end up identifying an importer or a distributor in India who will represent their brand in all operations that happen in India, right? So, and this is what could also be termed as a consignment model, wherein the brand appoints a distributor, sells the product to the distributor basis their terms and agreement. Typically, it is an extended credit period. The distributor in turn parks this inventory either in an Amazon warehouse or their own warehouse. He keeps it over there and surfaces the selection on Amazon for the customers to buy. When a customer ends up picking up, depending on where the shipment is, either Amazon will fulfill it directly, or logistic providers like Shiprocket would go pick it up and deliver it to the end customer, right? So this as an option exists. Now, how does the brand identify these distributors or these importers in the first place? My team partners with a few of them, and we can, of course, go ahead and recommend that to the brand. Vinculum itself is one of our most trusted partners, and the brands can approach Vinculum, and the Vinculum group can take the brands end to end, right, in terms of providing them guidance, compliance, introducing them to the right partners, and helping them set up the business. But broadly, this is the approach that exists per se. In terms of the categories that work, at the end of the day, from an Amazon perspective, we offer our customers almost all the categories that exist, right? So everything that can be sold on the B2C market is something that Amazon offers. And hence, from our perspective, I think anything, like as a brand, if you have selection to offer, Amazon is the opportunity, has the opportunity to go ahead and surface that and can help the brand scale in India. So I think that works absolutely fine. However, for country specific, for example, if let's say there's a brand from Indonesia that's coming in, we know that Indonesia is famous for its cosmetics category, like manufacturing cosmetics, in furniture, in appliances. And from an Amazon perspective, our team can spend some time with the brand, share with them insights in terms of what in these categories do well in Amazon, also review their product catalog and share with them that, hey, these are some of the white spaces. These are unique products that you manufacture, emerging categories in India, but currently it is underserved. So these are white spaces that you could go ahead and set up and partner. So I think somewhere we can exchange notes, share our own insights in terms of which categories are growing, and how is those categories split across features in those categories, price points, and share those with the brands so that the brands can also end up making informed choices around the kind of selection that they want to manufacture or service to the Indian customers. Here again, I think over the years, this is the partnership that we have with Vinculum. Even service providers like Vinculum will have insights into these product lines, and we can jointly partner to help the brand scale up.
Great. Anirudh, thanks. I think very, very valuable insights, and this is exactly what brands look for. So on that logical note, and you mentioned Shiprocket. So if I go to Vishesh and ask him, Vishesh, the situation in India, while is of course booming, but still uncertain with, we don't know when the next wave will hit, whether lockdown will come back. So any advice you have for international brands or sellers planning to come into India, use your services? What would you want them to consider, think of?
So I think for international brands, honestly, it has been, even with the waves coming in, or unfortunately, but COVID did give them a lot of demand as well. So on the contrary, it's a good time for them. What they should be prepared for is the delays in compliance and structuring. So the best way to right now do an India entry would be via a distributor / partner, because there are delays from a compliance point of view with authorities. There are delays from setting up entities and all kinds of processes, right? All kinds of processes are delayed. So to test out the markets, to test the waters, and be ensure that you are fully compliant, I think it's best advisable to go with a local distributor / partner to start the business, at least in India. So local partners can help you with the warehousing, storage, taxation, remittance, all kinds of activities are fairly streamlined with those.
Okay. Sandeep, if you could shed some light also on, because you work in an area which is perhaps working with both, right? Facilitating brands trying to come into India and for brands are going out of India. If you could share some light on some of the policies that the government is thinking of to facilitate both inward as well as outward cross-border. I think that would be very, very valuable for our listeners.
Okay, so I'll start with our focus is, you can say, primarily on exports from India. So that is a place where we can play heavily. So what we have been doing is that, see, as I told you about the reach of around 1.5 lakh post offices, our duty is to make our staff also educated regarding the protocols to be followed in case of exports. Like there are some mandatory custom requirements, and based on the country of arrival also, there are some requirements needed. So that is an area where we are working on. So we, like under the umbrella of this UPU, and all country have their own compliances to be followed, right? So under this operational readiness for e-commerce project, we are working with our own point of sales, where we try to educate our people what is to be done when a small scale customer comes to you. Like there are forms to be filled, there are some items that is permitted, some are not permitted through postal channel, and that also varies between one country to the other. So that is one point in which we have been working on. And as I told you regarding the export facilitation center, there is one center at least in every state, so that the customer can directly approach those export facilitation centers to get their clearances done from whatever point of view that is needed. That is one thing. And with respect to incoming items are concerned, the same thing, like we are working with almost every postal operator in the world. And then we have set a set of standards that is common for all these countries. So every country is complying to a set of standards, which will ensure that there is a seamless flow of items from any country to India. So that is one area in which we are working on. And as a part of that, one thing that we have started recently is the what we call as electronic advanced data. So any item that comes to India, even before that item is loaded into a carrier, we get the information. We are working on getting the clearances done so that there is no delays in any part of the supply chain, like what we call as leg 1, leg 2, and leg 3. So the leg 1 is the country of origin, leg 2 is the carrier module, and leg 3 is the delivery portion. So all these things have been integrated through electronic platforms. There is a seamless flow of information, and then we are working towards moving into a model in which there is a clearance even before the article, even before the item is loaded onto an aircraft. Apart from that, one point where we are working on, based on the profile that we have with different countries, is that we are in the process of getting into bilateral or multilateral agreements with countries so that the delivery rates can be rationalized. If you look at the market rate, as far as an individual customer is concerned, I still think the postal rates are one of the cheapest, right? So if you go for an item, like I am not talking about the bulk customers who might have a registration with a bulk logistics operator, but if you are a single seller, a simple seller based in one part of the country, and if you look at the prices available for the customers, it is one of the cheapest in the country for sure. To make it even more cheaper, what we are working on is that we are getting into agreements with those countries wherever we have a demand from the customer. Like we are in touch with e-commerce companies also like Amazon. So their policy team, we do have regular meetings and all. And then we identify to which country does the mail flow? To which country are you using our channel? And based on that, we are working with those countries to facilitate. So that is also based on the destination country. Like in case of USA, there is a limit below which there is no need of any duty payments, clearances and all. So we do keep in touch with those countries. We are in constant liaison with the postal operators over there. And we make sure that from a government to government point of view, whatever thing that can be done from a facilitation point of view, right? And whenever there is a India and another country bilateral meeting, or when we meet under multilateral umbrellas, we try to facilitate exports through postal channel in whatever way possible based on the feedback that we get from customers. So these are the ways in which we facilitate imports as well as exports through postal channel.
And is there a central repository, Sandeep, where sellers can access all of this information, procedures that you just mentioned?
As far as the product details and all are concerned, it's definitely our website only, where you can see our products are basically, you can classify it into 4. One is a normal letter category only, and most of the e-commerce items in these days comes under that letter category only. Second is with respect to the express mail service, the EMS, or what we call domestically speed post. Third is the parcel. And the last one is the international track packet service, which is much cheaper than any other product. And currently it is available only for 15 countries in the Asia Pacific region. So for all different categories of products, whatever thing is there, like details are available over website. And I would like to point out on one more thing. Earlier till 2018, we didn't have a bifurcation of something called like commercial export and a non-commercial export. So from 2018 onwards, we are facilitating commercial exports also. And the reason is that a commercial exporter from India, he is eligible for a lot of refunds and all, like GST refunds you have, and other like from currency exchange point of view, and they're like from Director General of Foreign Trade. So a commercial exporter from India, he is eligible for a lot of tax benefits. In order to facilitate that, from 2018 onwards, we have something called a postal bill of exports also, details of which you will be able to see in the India Post website. So once you fill a postal bill of export and bring your consignment into the designated office, and once that item leaves India, the exporter is eligible for a lot of tax benefits. So that is something which I think bulk exporters from India can look into, because I'm not very sure how much people are aware about it. So India Post website definitely is a repository of all these kind of information.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Sandeep. And Sandeep mentioned about Money Matters Friends, and that's very important in business. And we come to therefore Mukesh, who is the expert on this. So Mukesh, 2 questions for you. I'll ask the first, and once you answer, I'll ask the second. So the first question is, banks typically have lots of offerings for big corporate houses, but when it comes to SMEs and MSMEs, which actually are now trying to drive the cross-border deluge, if I may say, is not always having those facilities. So if you could throw some light on how can fintech companies fill this gap, and what is happening, and what is your company or others in the trade you think doing to help SMEs, particularly those who are interested in the cross-border trade from a finance perspective?
Rightly put, Shorit, as you mentioned, banks erstwhile have catered to the big conglomerates, and those conglomerates get very attractive rates, and in terms of managing their accounts also is something which is taken care by the banks really well. But when we talk about the SMEs, normally for the SMEs and the e-commerce clients, they have a lower inbound volume compared to the big MNCs and the conglomerates. So that being the reason, once you have lower inbound volumes coming in the cross-border space, the rates that you normally get from the banks are slightly higher. That's what our experience has been. So in that way, we have a role to play, because we cater normally, we cater mainly to the e-commerce segment of sellers and the SMEs. So the rates that we provide is, we have seen as well, it is somewhat better compared to the banks. And at the same time, when we talk about the approval rates and all also, let's talk about the banks, right? I mean, if someone is taking the money from the banks, they have to get the wire transfer done in order to get the money credited into their bank account. So wire transfers again are, in terms of timelines, I would say it takes up to 2 to 3 days. Whereas if someone comes through a fintech space to receive the payments, then the payment can be credited in the same day itself, right? When we talk about the export channel. So timelines is also something wherein you would say that fintech companies, at least for some certain segment of customers, they are more lucrative to them. And lastly, I would want to say that fintech companies also provide a very good ecosystem for these SMEs to help them grow into the new channel of growth, right? I mean, let's say someone who is venturing into a new platform altogether, let's say Amazon, eBay or something. In that case, when they enter into that segment, either they have to do their own research to understand what is it that takes for them to be successful on the platform, or they have to rely on someone to handhold them and help them do their businesses. So in that way, what we are trying to do is we are trying to build a proper ecosystem, and through that ecosystem we try to give everything that a SME needs in order to become successful onto these new channels, right? Be it logistics, be it taxation compliance related queries, or for that matter, understanding what kind of products does well there. So we try to build up all the internal mechanisms to help our sellers understand all those nuances. So these are some of the things that we are doing apart from what has been offered to the exporters erstwhile in the traditional route.
Super, super, excellent. And the follow-up question, Mukesh, is if you could share some thoughts on the opportunity for having cross-border payment as a growth engine for Indian exports. I think you answered a little bit of that, but if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I've tried to answer that to an extent in my previous question, in your previous question. But let me just help you understand, how exactly things are moving ahead here. So when we see the data for the last 10 years, the cross-border transactions from India to, not in India, I mean, global transactions have doubled, like close to doubled in the last 10 years, right? And in that way, it becomes all the more important for India to be part of that journey wherein exports and all the cross-border payments or the cross-border trade is happening. So plus when we talk about the current government, the incumbent government itself is emphasizing on Make in India, and they are also doing everything in their bit possible to incentivize the exporters and to come into the space of exporting rather than just restricting themselves to domestic selling. So in that way, it becomes very important that we help our new gen manufacturers get exposure to the export marketplaces also. So in that way, what we have seen is whenever the SMEs venture out through the e-commerce platforms, or let's say they want to do direct B2B exports also, at times they have question of how do they receive their money back to India. Or let's say in some countries, there are some regulatory challenges also. So they find a lot of difficulties in understanding those regulatory challenges, setting up their inventories, setting up their entities and doing their businesses there. So that's where the fintech companies are providing customized solution to understand the problems of the SMEs and help them get the required approvals, help them receive their remittances in the virtual accounts which these fintech companies provide. And not only that, now that there is like a trade war and there are many fintech companies which is flocking into this space of cross-border payments. So the rates that is also being provided recently is much, much lower compared to the rates that we used to see, let's say, a couple of years back. So in that way, the difference in terms of rates that the bank provides and these fintech companies has started diminishing. So so what happens when the rate starts reducing, the volume of transaction which can happen through the fintech space is also increasing. So these are some of the things that these fintech companies are doing in order to facilitate whatever we can do from our end for a SME to do an export business.
And that's amazing. That's amazing. That's really a whole new world, right? And with that, we come back to Anirudh and Amazon. So Anirudh, one of the questions that keeps coming up with brands is, returns and reconciliation. And you've already said before that, it's somewhere else. But they always think, what happens if it doesn't sell and how do I do reconciliation? And what are the different business models and how do they work? If you could help our audience understand a little more of the nuances.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Sued. So if I look at any brand and their business around to this on Amazon, I think on the brand's P&L, after logistics cost, which is first mile as well as then the last mile delivery cost to the customer, and then you have custom duties, etc. And then returns would be like the third highest cost for any brand. And it's important to understand how do we reduce it, which I would break into two parts from our perspective. One is how do you reduce the returns right upstream? Like how do you ensure that customers return your product lesser? How do we make that happen? And second is for the products that do get returned, how do we get the most value out of it in terms of a higher salvage value, so that the losses get reduced? Spending some time on the first point, right, to say that how do we reduce returns? Customer returns is something which is very unique to the Indian consumers' buying behavior also on e-commerce. India overall sees its customers being more critical of the product and the quality, and hence returns are much higher in India also. It is also linked to some extent to the high degree of cash on delivery overall as an option available, because unlike other global marketplaces wherein customers pay for the products upfront to digital instruments, in India there is still a high percentage of cash on delivery transactions, and hence there's a likelihood that the product will get returned. However, said and then that is not in the brand's control. Our objective has always been, like, while Amazon builds systems, processes in terms of increasing the number of transactions in the electronic medium more, and thereby changing some of the customer behaviors. I think with the brands, what we've always said is, how can we share data points with them around the reasons for the customers returning their products? How should the brands be absorbing that information and further taking actions at their end to ensure that returns reduce? Some of these could be, and I'm just taking examples, could be around product quality. Right. So on Amazon, one of the things that Amazon really provides is a rich database around customer reviews. Right. So brands have access to these reviews, but for a lot of brands which has a wide breadth of selection and a lot of reviews, it gets very difficult to track them. Right. The second data point that we have is whenever a customer returns the product back to Amazon, they also share certain feedback as the reason codes for returning the product. We have our machine learning algorithms that goes ahead and absorbs all of this information and shares very actionable insights with the brand back, saying that, hey, like in your specific product, this specific product, why don't you go ahead and relook at A, B, or C? And maybe those are the wide reasons for customers to go ahead and return the product. So that insight is provided to the brands, easy for them to action on it. The second point that also another insight that goes is that a lot of times, and for cross-border, it's all the more heightened given that the product also goes to the first mile at times, is also packaging. We also share insights around packaging, and there is a lot of guidance that we've shared with the brands in terms of upgrading their packaging to a 3-ply, 5-ply carton basis a single ply colored carton. Because packaging for e-commerce is actually different from packaging for the offline world. Right? You don't have to go ahead and print a lot of material and spend a lot of money in terms of designing the packaging, making it attractive. You need to make it more sturdier. So some of these insights do get passed on to the brands for them to absorb, reduce returns. So that is one part. The second part is that once these products do get returned, and in a consignment model is very easy because the products are already parked in the Amazon warehouse by the distributor. So whenever a customer is asking for return, either Amazon through its logistics or through a third-party logistics picks it back, has it come to its warehouse, wherein we grade the product to say that is the product in a sellable status or can it not be sold anymore. So whatever is sellable is fine. So the brand recovers 100% of the value over there because it's available for sale again. The critical aspect is what do you do of the products that are not sellable? And some of these could just be the boxes being damaged. Some of it could be that the seal is open, right? And it is over here that we offer brands the choice of either taking back these products to their local warehouse, refurbishing them, and then sending it back to us. We also have third-party service providers who will do this job for the brands, provided the brands train them on how it's supposed to be done. For some categories like apparel, we've also built this in-house capability in terms of packaging, printing of MRP labels, etc. Again, third-party service providers, because a lot of these activities can't happen in our own premises, but with the brand's consent, all of this is done so that the brand ends up recovering a lot of it. If products can't be made sellable again, we also have a network of liquidation partners who are ready to pick up all of these products at a much better negotiated rate than what typically brands get when they negotiate with them offline. So for us, it's always important to ensure that our brands and our distributors, our sellers with whom we partner, recover the maximum value from every transaction that they do with us, because that's the money that they'll again invest back into the business. So these are some of the initiatives that we've taken over the years.
I think all fantastic points, right? So the first thing which I think we heard is prevention is better than cure. When you're talking about returns, instead of being scared of returns, figure out what causes it in the first place and prevent it. Absolutely. Right? Second is what we heard is you talk about data analytics, and data is changing the world, right? Take better informed decisions, and partnering with Amazon with its rich data and analytics tools will certainly help. I think the third thing we heard is a lot of common sense, right? Using sturdier boxes, which reduce the chances of breakage or pilferage, obviously does wonders. And the fourth thing which we heard is you actually help them recover as much of the money as possible, rather than having it a dead loss. And I think that's the reason why people like Amazon, people like Shiprocket, Ping Pong, India Post are preferred partners, because you're thinking on behalf of the seller as well. I think that's very important. Thanks, Anirudh. And on similar lines, maybe I go to Vishesh. And Vishesh, if you could also comment on, I think, common question that keep arising is, where do I park my inventory? How much? And you talked about, multiple warehousing, and also compliance around government rulings, any other things that need to be there. If you could shed some light in terms of what's happening, what are the trends, and what would your advice be to people trying to come in and sell in India?
Yeah, of course. So it completely depends upon the category of your product, right? So whenever you are entering a country, each category, and there are very country-specific rules and certifications around those categories. And when you want to enter, for example, if you want to enter with a personal care category, right, you will have to get India-specific licenses around your product, and you will have to get your product tested around certain norms and etc. Then, for example, in some countries, getting your product, even from FMCG point of view, right, getting that markings of a veg or a non-veg are not mandatory in other countries, but in India is definitely mandatory, right? So your packaging, your labeling, how you are communicating, there are mandatory requirements in terms of specifications. You'll have to mention around your product on your description page. And from a return point of view as well, some categories are mandatory requirement that you need to accept returns for some categories. So all those things, I think one needs to go through those playbook. There are guidelines are of course available online, but ensuring so you are not getting banned or getting penalized for certain things that you might have missed out from a compliance point of view is very important. And Shiprocket, we give you that checklist. So there is a full page where one can get that checklist completely category dependent. So once you want to sign up for a category.
Super, excellent, Vishesh. I think we've made fantastic time. We have time for one last question, which is for everybody. And the question is common, which is to say that, if I am a seller either wanting to go out of India or wanting to come into India, and if I come to you for advice, apart from saying, you must partner with us, which has to be advice number one. Besides that, what are the top 2 or 3 suggestions that you would give to brands? We start with Mukesh. Mukesh, over to you. Your top 3 points or suggestions to brands who want to be successful in India or who want to be successful in cross-border outside. I think you're on mute,
Yeah.
Mukesh.
So this is one question which I would say is not completely, can be completely answered only from payments perspective. Rather, I would try to answer it from my previous experiences. So I would say there has been a lot of cases wherein people who venture into exports, they try to see what is it that is in demand rather than focusing what is it that is their strength, right? So at times it could be a case that there would be a manufacturer of a certain product. He would try to straight away jump with a product which he is not very good at, thinking that there is probably not ample demand for that particular product into the other space. Rather, he would try to venture into a new market altogether which has a good demand, but he is not good at it. So that's one thing which I would say that, try to focus on your strength initially, and then from your strength, you can build up to maybe, venture horizontally into the other spaces. So that's one thing. Secondly, try to get all your things with respect to compliance sorted. I have seen a lot of sellers, especially into categories like beauty and grocery, they go bust after a point in time, right? Just because of the fact that they do not understand the compliance requirements well. And not only that, at times they also get into a legal tangle when it's this customer complaining about your products. So in that way, you have to be absolutely sure about the product that you are selling and understand all the complications which you might confront in order, like when you are entering into a new market altogether. So you have to take care of that. And finally, from the payment standpoint, also for every set of customer or let's say client, the payment requirements could be different, right? Like there could be companies who would work real time to pay their vendors. Like they have strict deadlines when it comes to paying their vendors and all, right? So for them, timelines become super important. So for such companies, maybe the traditional route of banking may not be as good a solution, because there, as I have told before, there the mechanism in which the payment gets inbounded is different. While for some, the bottom line, or you would say the bottom line for those companies are so slim that the rates become very, very important for them, and they play on volumes. For them, the preferred partners could be banks. So you have to chalk it out just before you are starting that with what should be the right channel for you to get the payments coming in from. So these are some of the things, if you do right, I think it can be a good start to a new journey.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you so much. We go to Sandeep. Sandeep, your advice to brands who are, who you're trying to take out of India. What would your top 3 points of advice be?
Okay, so with respect to only, say, I'm talking on from a small exporter point of view. The first thing I would be advising is to visit an export facilitation center or go to your nearest post office if you're planning to ship it through postal channel. Okay, there is a lot of information that you must have. That is like what is to be done with respect to X country, Y country and all. So you visit a nearest export facilitation center of India Post, or go to nearest post office, which I'm sure is at a 20-minute walking distance from your home, whichever place of the country you are in, first thing. Second, be sure about the compliances, right? What right document that you might have to submit. Generally, we hear a complaint regarding that, okay, shipment, there is a delay in processing, there is a delay once it reaches the destination country and all. And most major reason that we have seen is with respect to the compliances. People have an inherent tendency to under-declare the value of items, wrongly declare the item, whatever that is inside, use the gift channel for other purposes. Because when you go through a postal channel, it is generally government to government business, and it can only be fair play. So in that way, be strict with compliances, whatever that is there inside your shipment, declare it correctly, properly, whatever the value it is, etc. Because when you compare from a global scenario, the compliances of these countries also changed on a yearly basis. Like starting from 2021, we had the Stop Act of USA, synthetic trafficking opioids and all. There was a law with respect to USA that came into force in 2021. Then by 2021 mid, the compliances of European Union completely changed. So we act accordingly and we make our compliances also aligned to the global requirements. So be sure about the compliances, declare things properly, the value, everything. Second point. And third is understand the right product that will suit your requirement. So from a postal channel, there are multiple products. When you look at the domestic scenario only, you might be thinking, okay, speed post, registered post and all. And each comes with a different value addition altogether. Like we give registered services, we give trackable services, we give insurance services, we give bulk services. So understand the product that is required, and then have an estimation of what volume that you are planning to go with in the next year. And with respect to every volume, there is a different discount structure, etc., that is available pan India. So have an understanding what your volume is going to be like, and then choose the right product. So when you ask for 3 things that to be taken care when you are a small exporter, this will be my opinion on that.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think great insights. And we kept hearing compliance. I think Mukesh mentioned, Sandeep mentioned, Vishesh mentioned. I'm going to ask Vishesh, and I'll end with Anirudh. Vishesh, from your perspective, your 3 or 4, if you want, most important points you would want anybody to remember while coming into the to do cross-border.
So I think the top point that I would like to advise upon is take data back decisions, right? So if you are entering or launching your brand outside India, the one thing that one needs to be very, very mindful of is the competition around your category, is the competition around your product, right? And now we live in an age where we have data, we have startups who have accumulated and aggregated catalogs across billions of marketplaces, right? So what you can do is you can either rely on those startups who can analyze your catalog and give you SKU-wise recommendation on what SKU you should be selling at what price. So they scrape catalogs across Amazon, across all other marketplaces, and they can give you very, very useful insights on what your product should be priced at, right? The other point, of course, should be very careful by designing your supply chain. While for some SKUs, a drop shipping method should be the best method because people might wait for that long for the product to arrive. If they are getting, and there could be 2 reasons. One, the advantage around uniqueness of the product, and the other is the undisputable advantage around price. In both of those scenarios, a buyer will wait for a product to be drop shipped. For any other scenarios, they will expect their shipment to be coming in much sooner. In those scenarios, the later that you are shipping, there are higher chances of return / non-acceptance of that product, right? So design your supply chain very carefully. Have some SKUs, fast-moving SKUs, maybe stored within the country, and for others that are slower-moving SKUs, you could be doing drop shipping. And lastly, I believe choose your channel of selling very, very carefully. Whether it is your direct website, whether it is on Amazon, and that is completely dependent on what is your category that you are selling. For certain categories, you might be better off going direct. And for certain categories, the best approach could be using a marketplace, Amazon or other marketplaces who are completely dominant on those categories. So I think that those are my 3 points that I would advise for people who are entering or going outside India.
Really, I think true words of wisdom, and I'm a retailer myself, and exactly the same, saying if we want to sell something, we need to understand what's going to work given the competitive landscape, the market landscape. And the other thing is also success means success for everybody, because I bring in a product into a country and my partners are not getting the sales. Very soon I will not be a preferred seller anymore. And that's a fantastic point. I'm sure Anirudh will echo many of these points and probably more. So Anirudh, we end with you in terms of your 3 or 4 points of what you would recommend, advise sellers and brands.
Sure. Yeah, I think the other panelists have brought in very relevant points, and I'm just, I think some of them will get repeated, and I'm just rephrasing them in a different way. For brands, especially entering into India, the first thing is think long term. Right? India is not an easy market. It's not a market in which you'll get returns immediately. Like, you need to be invested in the long term. Because the market has a lot of potential. Like, if you crack the market, like this is going to be a market that will give you returns that will pay out for the years to come. Right? And it's so and over here it's important because today for a lot of these brands, they can look at the world in two parts. One is mature markets like US, Europe, Japan, which have scaled to a large level. And yes, the business scale exists over there. And then there are a bunch of emerging markets like Middle East, India, South America, Africa. And if you are looking at India over here as one of the emerging markets, it is I think the market to conquer. Right? You conquer India, and I'm sure we would have trained the brands enough to succeed in any other emerging market. And I think for the brands, as you look at scaling and expanding into operations, it'll be good to have a team that is dedicated on mature markets and a team that is dedicated on emerging markets. Don't have the same team focus, because then the emerging markets will never get its due share. Right? The potential lies over there, and invest for the long term for your business. So that's first point. The second point is related to what others covered. I would say think local. The products that do well globally for you may not necessarily succeed in India. Right? So as Vishesh called out, look at data for what's selling in India. Right? And what of your catalog works best over here. You may also need to tweak certain specifications of your existing product to better suit the Indian customer's demand. So think local, be nimble in terms of the kind of selection, in terms of the packaging, in terms of following the compliance laws for India. So that would be my second feedback for the brands. And the third bit would be just focus on building your brands. Right? I think it's very easy to get lost in the large number of selection that is there and just trying to be a me too, or just being another brand across all the options a customer have. Focus on building your brands. Marketplaces like Amazon offer you that opportunity to communicate with the customers on the detail pages that are available. Spend time reading through the customer reviews, the feedback, and again, accessing all the data that is there to go ahead and build a brand. And then choose your strategy wisely to say, do you want to be a brand that is going to expand vertically or expand horizontally? And we've seen success stories both ways, but that play exists today. Right? So feel free to move beyond your comfort zone of your existing product category to expand, and you will see more success in that sense. So yeah, these were the 3 points that I had.
I think superb inputs from everybody. And while all of you were speaking, it took me back 3 decades. I was part of the startup team of the world's most famous denim wear brand in India. We did almost exactly the things that you said. The only difference was we did not have the luxury of having Amazon and Shiprocket and Ping Pong in the early 90s, right? So it took us a little have today is with partners like you. The pace can be much faster, but the basic, whether it be planning, never change. So really, really appreciate. So we've completed our 1 hour and a few minutes. I think wonderful insights from all of you. Thank you to everybody. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Ms. Sakshi. Sakshi has collated, I think, as we were speaking, significant number of questions have come in, which is good because that means people want to know more. So Sakshi, would you please take over and go around the questions, and please mention who the question is aimed for. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So the first question we have is for Mr. Sandeep from Mr. Sujit Oman. The question is, we work with India Post and pleasantly surprised with the services. The shipment time is relatively higher as compared to the UPS or DHL. Is there something that is happening on that side? Against a shipment time of 5 to 7 days for UPS, India Post is 21 to 30 days. Any help?
Okay, thank you, Sujit, for that question. See, if you're talking about the pandemic period per se as such, one thing that happened was that, you see, we are dependent on other flights as well as other countries for their delivery, right? So in such cases, there has been delays. But then overall, if you see, like we have been monitoring the data for USA, it generally takes around 7 to 10 days max for the item to be delivered. So, and another major point that I had told you regarding compliances. So of late, countries have been very strict on compliance. That can be one reason. You will have to declare things properly. But otherwise, things are getting better now. We are having services to around 70 plus countries. And see, as I told you earlier, we offer a wide range of products as such. So if you're looking on a time, like very time sensitive item, we would suggest using of our express mail service or EMS, or locally called as speed post. Otherwise, the timings have been better as on date. And if you have any particular complaint with respect to shipment from any part of the country, maybe through Vinculum, you will be able to get my personal information and you can share it with me. That can be right way, I guess. Right, Sakshi, if I answer that question.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. The next question is for Mr. Anirudh. And the question is, as a single brand owner based out of Indonesia, is there a way Amazon can help to identify these distributors in India who are trustworthy and also are capable of selling digitally in India with complete know-how, as all larger distributors may not be partner with service providers, or we may say Vinculum?
Sure, very much. So as I mentioned, as a team today, we work with a large number of international brands across the world, and we're partnering with them essentially through a network of trusted distributors. So we could, of course, facilitate those introductions, as I said. There are also a network of service providers like Vinculum that exists today, and I think you also have the option of partnering via them. What we could always do is introduce you to some of them. You could interact and see which of these partners are you able to best establish a connect with, you feel most comfortable with from that perspective, and then we could take things forward.
Thank you so much.
What we're also
sorry.
What we're also doing is we're also integrating some of these distributors in our service provider network, which Amazon has, and so that any third party can come and serve through the service provider network, read about these service providers who specifically offer facilities, distribution facilities, and just get connected with them through that.
Thank you, Anirudh. So the next question is for Mr. Vishesh and is from Mr. Aditya. How is the overall increase in the beauty and personal care category during pandemic?
So I think that is the only category that grew by leaps and bounds in pandemic. And I can't answer why, but just from data point of view, I think that category grew phenomenally. We have seen launches of new brands, and from a buyer point of view as well. Unlike the old view that people would prefer to buy brands that are old than accept newer brands, we have seen newer brands succeed more than the heritage brands like Gillette and all. So I think that category has grown phenomenally well, and there has been a good acceptance from the buyers as well. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Mukesh. As a brand owner in India and moving inventory on consignment to another country, is there a model wherein fintech can advance the amount helping to free up cash flow?
Well, in terms of freeing up the cash flow, it depends on the channel where you are doing your business, right? I mean, if you are doing your e-commerce business and you are integrated with a fintech for that, in that case, the cash flows are completely controlled by the timelines of the e-commerce platform. When it comes to exporters, yes, regarding the cash flow and reducing the timelines, I had already covered that. Talk about the traditional channels, the way the payment comes to the client's account is different compared to the way in which it comes in a fintech channel. So normally in the traditional channels, it comes through wire route, while through the fintech channels, it comes through virtual accounts. So virtual accounts are just like real time, the same day itself, you can expect the cash flows to come to you. While in the traditional route, if you're going through the wire transfer, it takes up to 2 to 3 days. So that's where the fintech people are helping. And plus, in terms of approvals also, there is a way in which we try to short circuit the entire timelines, because a lot of transactions, especially if they are related to categories which comes under the scrutiny of the government and all. For every payment flows, there is a strict compliance which is put in place. If you go through the traditional channels, you have to either, if you have a point of contact in those channels who can take the documents from you and help you in doing the compliance in an expedited way, then it can be done. But other than that, here in the fintech space, you normally have a dedicated POC who helps you in every single payment that you get in the cross-border space. So we have seen normally the timelines that a customer sees in a fintech channel is lower compared to the traditional channels. So this is how we can expedite things.
Thank you, Mukesh. So the next question is from Mr. Sandeep. And Sandeep, we have so many questions for you. So I'm merging two questions. The question is India Post working with multiple countries on preferential rates for bulk movement too? And can you also help, what are the benefits for exporters from the government, or where can we search, or whom could we get in touch with who could give us this information?
Okay, thank you, Sakshi. Coming to the first question, yes, wonderful question. We are working with many countries in order to give preferential rates for bulk movement as well as for bulk customers. And with respect to second question, see, it is not exactly under my domain, but I will give you a brief idea on what all tax benefits that you have. So if you look through the foreign FTP policy 2015 to 2020, you will see two main things called merchandise export from India scheme, and then we have a service export from India scheme, MEIS and SEIS. So if you go through the details of these two schemes, you will get a fair idea of what all benefits a customer might have when you export from India. And that will include duty exemptions when you import an item from another country for the purpose of exports. And then you are bound for duty remissions. Like once you export an item from India, and if you had paid a tax to that, once it is exported and there is a proof that the item has been exported, you are bound to get some duty concessions and all. So you'll come, it will come as your export credit. So we have schemes like that. Then we have service tax rebates, then duty drawbacks. Then so there are like 7-8 schemes I will be able to tell you that is there for a customer. And one repository for information for these kind of things will be the DGFT website, Directorate General of Foreign Trade website. And I have seen similar information in websites of other organizations like FIO and then other aggregators also. So a basic Googling will help you. If you can search for like export benefits from India, you will get details about MEIS, SEIS, the duty concessions, duty exemptions, credit facilities, etc. So these are the basic benefits that an exporter from India will get. And with respect to going for bilateral discussion with countries and all, the coming year is important for us. It is the 75th anniversary of India's independence. So there are discussions going on with many countries we are in. So once things are finalized, we'll definitely let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. So the next question is for Mr. Vishesh. And the question is, how are carriers vetted during onboarding? And if compliance breach happens, does the sender or the receiver have to pay penalties?
So if step one, compliance from a carrier point of view, of course, Shiprocket is responsible for that. And we do a very, very strong agreements with all of our carrier partners. And penalties and compliance breaches can happen from both sides. One from the seller's side as well, where they miss out on some documentation or declaration. In that scenario, we of course help them negotiate, but the penalties are passed on. And if there are compliance breaches from a carrier point of view, the seller is fully insured from Shiprocket's side, where we will ensure that no penalties are passed on to you, and there will be a full insurance covers around those to be able to take care of that. And that could be in scenarios of lost as well. If lost in transit, the shipment is completely insured.
Thank you so much, Vishesh. So the next question is from Mr. Aditya, and it's for both Anirudh and Sandeep. Maybe Anirudh, you can go first. The question is, What is the government doing to facilitate more free trade agreements and emerging markets?
But, I don't think I'm in a position to answer that from that perspective, to say what is the government doing per se. I don't think I'm right place to answer.
Okay, Mr. Sandeep, if you can take that.
See, again, it's at a very premature stage. There are discussions going on with respect to free trade agreements with many countries. Maybe once it is finalized, then we'll be able to share more information on that. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sandeep, we have one more question for you, and that is your comment on why the, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so the question is from Mr. Akash, and it's, could you please tell me more about the most important online market research tools for American and European markets for e-commerce platform like Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, and others? So maybe Anirudh, you can take that up.
But I wouldn't have a lot of insights in terms of India out. What do you do? There are teams at Amazon that focus especially on this, and they'll be better to guide you on that, maybe from the perspective. But what I can tell you is that there are basic research reports that are available from that perspective that can help guide you. Amazon India itself has a well-staffed team that can partner with these brands, give them insights around for country level to say what are the kind of categories that do well in the mature arcs of US, Europe, and what are the categories that do well in the emerging arcs of Middle East, Australia, all of these. So I think if a brand is interested, yes, they can reach out to me, and I can guide them further to the right individuals who can pick this up and guide them.
Thank you, Anirudh. So the last question for the day is again from Mr. Sandeep, and the question is your comment on why the transit times are different.
Okay. See, it depends on the carriers that we choose and then countries, right? So suppose, say, I'm sending it to Canada, for example. If India, especially with respect to COVID scenario, I'll just give you an example. Or say New Zealand or Canada, say. These days, there is a flight suspension when it comes to normal flight arrangements, right? The normal transport flights are cancelled. All we have is the Vande Bharat mission. So we get into tie-up with many countries, and suppose there is no direct Vande Bharat flights from India to Canada. In such cases, what we generally do is that we get into tie-up with other countries or carriers. Now, tie-up with a country is like we choose a country, say Germany, as our transit country, and we send mail items first to Germany, and from Germany, they will arrange for delivery in Canada. So that is how the supply chain system in postal network works. Second is with respect to a carrier. Suppose if a carrier doesn't have a direct flight to one place, say South Africa, a flight might carry from New Delhi to Addis Ababa via Ethiopian Airlines, and from Addis Ababa to South Africa through the same Ethiopian Airlines, a different flight. So that is how the transit arrangement is like. We have transit arrangement with airlines as well as with countries. So that is the reason why there is a differential timeline for different countries. There are countries like Singapore, USA, and countries in Asia Pacific which are directly connected by our empaneled flights, and so the transit time will be much lesser. And there are countries wherein compliances are really strict, especially European Union countries. So if your declaration is not done properly, then you might face issues. And I'm talking about declarations and compliances again and again is because we face a lot of issues in all legs of transportation with respect to this compliance point. There are people who sent, like the earlier question, it has been answered by someone else also. Like there are many people, maybe out of ignorance also, they send a lot of items as shipments from here to another country, and the other country might be outrightly rejecting the same item. Now the carrier airlines also has an issue, the sending country also has an issue, and definitely it will be passed on to the exporter. So these are the reasons why transit times differ with respect to countries. So the basic underlying rule is that with respect to our empaneled airlines, if there is a direct connectivity and if your compliances are done properly, it will get delivered in 5 or 7 days time. That is a general timeline that we follow. And if the connectivity to a country is different or difficult, then we have issues with respect to that. Especially when we had, during the pandemic scenario, we had connectivity issues to Australia and New Zealand, and the limited Vande Bharat flights, they were primarily used for carrying medical items, vaccines and all, which is totally understood. When you go to the logistics scenario, there is a priority given to different items. For Africa, there has been a huge vaccine supply from India. So the flights flying from India to a country in Africa might be given priority, definitely will be given priority to vaccines. And then the limited space will be given to postal items. So that is how the shipment or the transshipment scenario works. And that is why we have different transit times to different countries. And we categorize based on the product also. So if you have used maybe the cheapest product or the non-priority product, then it will definitely have a lower ranking and it will take some more time for it to get delivered. So that's how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. So Shorit, that was the last question we had.
Superb. So I think we've made fantastic time, friends. And on behalf of Vinculum, on behalf of all the audience members today, a genuine thank you to each of you. We know how busy you are, and we know the positions of responsibility that you hold. You've taken this time out and shared your valuable insights. Sincere appreciation, and we do hope audience members have learned from you, and we do hope many of them will connect with your organization either through Vinculum or directly, and we partner together for taking brands global from wherever they are. Thank you very much, Anirudh, Vishesh, Sandeep, Mukesh. Sincere appreciation.
Our pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.